Hello, good evening, and welcome to the final night of the 10th Lake County Film Festival. I'm very excited to show you tonight's film, Molto Bella, and I'm very excited to talk to both the director, Alexander Jeffery, and the star, Paul Peterson. How are you guys?
Hey, good. How are you doing?
Great. I'm doing fantastic. I feel like I'm limping to the finish line, but we're here, and it's been great to talk to everyone. And have such engaging conversations about their films. And honestly, even me, I've probably rewatched half maybe of the films again before I do these Q&As, including just finishing yours up a little while ago.
Oh, awesome. Nice.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's some of these films I haven't seen since January. So you
right.
forget little things. I remember, the basics, and I remember how they made me feel, but so many, specific things that I did not remember. Oh, I don't remember that. I didn't notice that because I was, had a different mindset on it. So,
Sure.
My first question to you, Alexander, because you wrote the film, where did you get the idea of these two souls and having them meet in Italy, and how much of it was just wanting to go on vacation somewhere else?
I think 99. No, I'm just kidding. So back in 2013, I was over in Sweden. I got to go over there and help my friend make a movie, and I got to be a first AD on it, and just kind of I called it basically my grad school for film because I learned so much on that set, and I was kind of struck with the idea of making a movie in Europe, and had a semi sort of non-romance romance on the set, and so that kind of struck a chord with me, and I wrote a draft of the script, whatever that was, 7 years ago now, that was absolutely god awful, and then I put it away for a long time, and started working on different short films. Met Paul, started working with Paul. And I sort of revisited this idea a couple of years ago after working with Paul and Andrea and a few other short films, and just thought, like, I like this idea of the two Americans meeting in Italy, but there's got to be more to it than that. And so I started just kind of ruminating on what I might want to say with the movie, and I realized from watching a short film that Paul had made that he's a good poet, and of course I've been a big fan of Andrea's music for a while, and I like movies that incorporate music in a diegetic way, like Once and Inside Llewyn Davis. And the first time that I watched Before Sunrise, Richard Linklater's film, that whole trilogy actually, I just found myself smiling the whole time, and I was like, I would love to make a movie that just makes people smile when they watch it. And so that was kind of like the conglomeration of that was the inspiration. And then Paul really helped me finesse the script and help me, fine tune what it was that I was trying to do with it. And so it was a great collaboration. And then Andrea being able to write the original music for the film, just kind of rounded it all out, rounded out the idea and the story.
Okay, I've learned to start taking notes to to keep track of the offshoots that I think of when people answer questions. Did you go to film school? You said film was okay. So, but you not to grad school. So
not to grad school. Yeah, I did undergrad at University of Nebraska, but in both theater and film. I did a double major. And then after that, I moved out to Los Angeles, which is where I met Paul. And even though he's from Nebraska, he actually went to school in South Dakota. So we didn't actually meet in Nebraska.
Yeah, I wanted to branch out from Nebraska, so I decided to go to college in South Dakota.
It's just so far away,
It's like, right on the border of Nebraska, pretty much.
Well, yeah, especially like metaphysically, right? South Dakota is like on the outskirts of Nebraska.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, so what you said really just struck me. You said that you wanted to make a film that would make people smile, but you cited as major influences films with downer endings.
That's true. You're right. Well, but even before Sunrise, which has I guess it's not a I mean it's not a downer ending, but it's definitely like a what's going to happen next ending. I just felt like I was smiling the whole time I watched it.
Sure.
Inside Llewyn Davis definitely is a downer. That movie was depressing, but I loved the soundtrack and I loved the way that music was incorporated into it.
Yeah.
And then Call Me by Your Name was another one recently that I was kind of like, man, that's a it's kind of what I want to do, like with this film, and in a different way, obviously, but yeah, like
and once as I mean, I gave an interview. We have my Friday night interview was a animated sci-fi glam rock opera. And I don't really like musicals. There's only certain ones that really fit the mold.
Sure.
And, one of them is the Once, diegetic music. Exactly. Well, anyway, so it struck me that what you cited as influences had downer endings, but also your movie does have a lot of melancholy qualities to it.
Yeah.
It does make you smile at the end, and there are lots of smiles throughout, but you definitely have more of a tone balance than something that I'm just saying, if you're trying to make people smile for an hour and a half, maybe you didn't do the best job at that. But I think your movie's better for it, obviously,
Yeah, no, and for sure. Like, I think when I mean, that was just sort of an initial, like, I just kind of, before Sunrise just was that sort of initial spark of like, this is a movie that probably not everybody's going to like, but I really like it. And definitely when we were reworking Molto Bella, we incorporated a lot of, personal stories from our lives in there. Paul has a lot of personal stuff in the film. Myself, like, the movie's dedicated to my grandpa at the end of it. And when he passed away, I kind of, there was a lot of things that I was thinking about at that time that made their way into the script in some ways. So you're right. There's a fair bit of melancholy, and these characters are definitely at a place in their lives where they're kind of in a vulnerable state, both of them. But one of the things that I found kind of true about being overseas, especially when you're traveling alone, is that when you meet somebody that you have some sort of similarity with, there's sort of this inherent, like, a friendship that might happen over months back home happens instantaneously. Because there's that level of vulnerability from being on, unfamiliar territory and just kind of in a new place and soaking up new things that kind of allows that to happen.
There's a, just you mentioning that, and I heard you say almost something exactly similar when I watched the Q&A today, but it really hit me about a time that happened to me. And it just remembered how vulnerable I was when I met these people when I was out of town, this couple, and how kind they were, and how that's always stuck out to me. But I didn't really relate it to your film before. I had finished producing a movie that my ex-wife wrote, and the day after we finished filming, she said she wanted a divorce. And 4 days later, I got on a plane to another city to be at a film festival, and I met some people there who were like super kind. And not only was it quick, but for me, I mean, I'm sure for them it was just kind of a thing that flitted by. But for me, it's something that's always stuck with me. Just the couple of days I talked to them, and just a few hours, how quickly it was. And so them being in these vulnerable states also rings so true for that it's not only is it going to be fast, but it's probably going to be long. And whatever happens after the movie, they're probably going to be, friends for quite some time. Yeah,
definitely.
Okay. So you answered your influences there as well. I think where I'm going to go next, actually, I'm going to go from where your answer was, because I have this written here. You said your first draft was horrible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't even think I let you read it, did I?
He eventually sent it to me just because we finished when I think we made a deal. When we finished the movie, you'd send me the draft.
Did I actually go through with that?
You sent it to me, and I read the first page, and I got to tell you, It was pretty fantastic.
It's rough. But to me,
Well,
that's a good sign. It means that I'm not stuck in,
Yeah.
stuck in one
For
place.
sure.
That I'm getting better. So that's,
Yeah.
100%.
100%.
That's ultimately the goal is each year to improve and not backtrack.
Yeah.
Well, my note here says artists that are afraid that they aren't good enough, and how autobiographical is that?
Yeah, so Paul and I made a film in 2015 called The Bespoke Tailoring of Mr. Bellamy. It's a short film. We played the festival circuit with it. We actually won the Louisiana Film Prize here in Shreveport with that film, and that kind of kickstarted our company. And then, we kept making movies for the film prize, and people would just always be like, yeah, your new movie's cool, but man, Bespoke, we love that one, Bespoke. And we were just like, yeah, but here's our new thing. And so for me, it was kind of like, I wasn't necessarily trying to remake and refine that magic of that one that we made. I was trying to chase things that I was interested in at the time, even if they might not be as universal, say, as that film. But there was kind of this pressure of following that up, even though it's, like small potatoes, it's short film, it's a certain area. I just kind of had that, like, I guess, sophomore syndrome kind of thing. And I thought that was kind of an interesting place to come from with the character of Josie, and to follow two people that were at very different places in their career. You have this talented person who's just like, yeah, I'm fine just writing and for myself and just getting it out, getting it on paper and then never doing anything with it. And she's like, yeah, but you're good and you need to share that with the world. And meanwhile, she's like, having that writer's block or whatever you want to call it of having put something out that's good and that people did like. And she's like, how do I do that again? And of course, a lot of that's about where she is in her life and all that. But for me, that just kind of struck a personal chord as well with our short films, and just that kind of pressure we felt of, all right, we did something good finally. Now we have to do something good again. So yeah.
Well, for him, it's not even a career for him. Right. It's not yet. I don't know what happened after. What do we have to wait for Molto Bella 2?
So it's starting to roll those ideas around. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
We go to another country. That'd be great.
Yeah, which you want to like figure out what country you want to visit first, and then.
I think Andrea really wants Greece, doesn't she? Hasn't she been saying Greece?
She wants Greece, but I'm kind of like, I'm either Barcelona or Scotland.
Would be great.
Yeah.
Oh,
Scotland. Yeah.
All right, there, boy.
Oy.
And what about the refusal to get any work actually done in the film? Is that autobiographical as well?
Oh gosh, probably. Not intentionally, but most likely. Yeah, no, I think I was watching Neil Gaiman's masterclass at the time that I was writing this. He's just a writer that I've always admired and adored. And he was kind of talking about one of his daily processes is to go for a walk and get bored. And so I guess the idea is Josie pitches this writer's retreat and they don't get any writing done because they just enjoy spending time with each other so much. And it's kind of that drawdown period after the film that they actually get the writing done. But I think you sort of do see, or I guess the intention was, and I hope you see that, that like even in the beginning when he gives her the little poem on the back of the car or back of the coaster, and then she starts putting it to music and sort of how they draw from each other and bounce off each other. Even though there's a lot of, walking around and drinking wine and not getting much writing done. It is sort of the two of them coming together that starts pulling different things from each other.
You mentioned a little while ago that Paul is a poet himself. I don't know where this note is that I write. Oh, yes, that I wrote. So the writing of the songs and the poems, did you write everything, or were they involved with that as well? Did Andrea write some of her songs?
She wrote. So there were big blank sections in the script that's like, they fight. No, like song goes here, poem goes here, and so with the poems, and I'll let Paul talk about this more. But I basically told him, like, I really don't want you to write any of the poems until we get there, even though that's a tremendous amount of pressure to write them on set, like while we're doing this. I just felt like having been there for the scout, I just felt like he was going to get crazy amounts of inspiration from being there. So
I don't really have anything to add to that. I mean, that's absolutely right. It was a good move on his part, you know.
God, that feels really risky, but I think about similar things and how everything kind of hinges on the songs in once, you know.
Yeah.
I think about how in Oh Brother everything hinged on the performance of Man of Constant Sorrow, and how they you know, they recorded Dan Tominski instead, you know, as a this is definitely going to work. So it's crazy that you didn't necessarily have a backup, and but the whole story didn't hinge on how good his poetry is. You know?
Thank God. That's where I think I relate to Hal the most. It's just because, you know, I mean, he does it because it makes him happy, you know. But it's like me, Alex can attest to this. I was terrified each time I had to perform the poem the first time in front of the crew. I naturally have a self-deprecating nature, and when it comes to poetry, I'm just like, I don't even want to call myself a poet. Like, what makes me a poet, you know? So it's kind of interesting. So now that the poetry is kind of out there in the world and I can't take any of those words back, I am interested to see how people sort of react to it, because poetry is not really a mainstream thing, you know? So it's interesting. And that's why what gives it its sort of charm, I guess, with this movie.
Well, and you mentioned the word risky. I mean, to me, the entire thing was risky. Like going to a country where none of us spoke the language, making a movie with a group of friends, bringing all the equipment over, staying in a villa. Like, I mean, there's so many things that could have gone wrong, and just luckily they didn't. But Andrea did write all of the songs except for the final song before we went over there. And so like we had been kind of going back and forth on those songs for a few months. But then the last song, same thing. I told her that I would really want her to write it after the fact, based on her experience working on the film. And then that's the final song that she plays for Hal. And you actually heard it.
Yeah, so to clarify, so the Sicily trip, that was all one block of filming. And then like a month and a half, 2 months later, we went to Omaha, Nebraska, and shot the final music scene at a venue there. And so it was in that time period after the main shooting where she needed to write this final song.
Yeah.
And she couldn't do that until after we finished in Sicily. And
and then we didn't let Paul hear it until he was actually sitting in the chair in rolling when the camera was rolling, and he heard it for the first time while she played it, and it was on his reaction shot.
Wow, that's smart. I'm going to mention a bad word right now. I read a review of the film recently, and I saw a word I hate. Word I hate. That word, man, that is the word. God, that word bothers me so much. You know, in its truest form, you know, it involved a lot of improv. And as I watched the film, I didn't see where that was. I was like, this seems like a very well scripted, well-paced movie. But then you just mentioned that, no, you had hunks that were, you know, just details. So tell me about mumblecore, and tell me about scripting versus improv.
I mean, to be completely honest, until I read that review, I really didn't know much about what mumblecore was. It definitely wasn't my intention to make mumblecore, but you know, obviously people can take whatever they want from it. But no, every bit of dialogue was scripted, except for like a few little minor sections where they kind of extended the banter after the scene.
Yeah.
Like there's a bit where she's playing a song for him on the Overlook, and he says, you know, I want 50% because I wrote it, and she's like, well, you get 49. Like that was a little bit of improv between her and Paul, but most of it was scripted, and you guys may have kind of drifted a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we probably maybe like reworded a few things, but I mean, it was like definitely stuck to the script. And I will say, when I saw mumblecore for the first time, the moment I saw the term, I was like, I know exactly the movie they're talking about and what they're referencing, just because it's such an efficient descriptor. But
yeah.
You know, and I was like, I never got that either, but some people do, I guess. So
yeah,
it's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the film I made was also pegged by some people that way, and it was like, we hammered this script out like, you wouldn't believe, and there was almost no improv, and that drove me crazy. But I did feel one thing that made me realize, occasionally doing a festival and just kind of being in the industry, occasionally you will see people's first performances. I programmed the first performance of boy, I'm sorry, I'm just totally spacing on his name. But he wound up playing the Red Skull in the later Marvel movies, and he's on The Walking Dead. And it just so happens I played his first movie, and there's been a couple. What is his freaking name? All right, never mind. Fine, I'll just do it. But my third year of the festival, I had Joe Swanberg as a jury member.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And at the time, that year's festival was, he's the king of the mumblecore. I mean,
yeah.
And at the time, my festival was 2 weeks before South by, and he handed me his second movie on a disc that hadn't premiered yet, and that's Greta Gerwig's first performance. And honestly, that I realized after I read the term mumblecore. While the movie doesn't remind me of any mumblecore, Andrea's performance and how naturalistic and charming she is kind of reminded me of that first time I saw Greta Gerwig, and that was about all I could give the mumblecore label.
Yeah. No, I guess I consider kind of Frances Ha in the mumblecore genre a little bit. Like I love that movie, but maybe not. I don't know. I really do love that film though.
Those early movies were very much based on improv and coming up with a storyline and just kind of seeing what happens. And I don't know for sure, but it seems like that would be you don't spend that kind of money without really having an idea,
Right, for sure.
You don't spend Frances Ha money without really having a good plan and
plot. Yeah.
I could be wrong, last question, sort of about the script, although it could sort of be about the, the final film. I find the power dynamics of them so interesting. Right from the start, she seems so bossy and confident at their first meeting, and then I feel like their vulnerabilities just constantly shift back and forth. Can you talk about the idea behind that, and how you use that to propel the story forward?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and definitely not one that I've been asked before. So I think in the first scene, Joe, when Hal approaches Josie, Josie is established. She's maybe had a song on the radio, and people sort of know who she is, and she's not like Taylor Swift famous, but she's well known. And so I think she's sort of used to people coming up to her and approaching her and that kind of thing. But then when Hal finally reads her the poem in the restaurant, and she realizes that they're peers, and it's not like you're weird, like stalking me kind of thing, that I think that they really start they become having like a new dynamic at that moment, where she sees him as a peer and somebody that she wants to, I guess,
Yeah, and I always kind of took it as like a location thing. So this is Hal's first time in Sicily at the beginning.
That's true, yeah.
So Josie's been there, so she's confident in the scene. She has control, and then up until Hal gets to the villa, like he starts getting more comfortable. He's like, oh, I want 50%. She's like, you only fit 49. And then all of a sudden, the next day, they're at the villa, and then she's pretty much bossing him around again because he's in her new turf that he's not familiar with. So then it starts gaining again after that. So I always kind of saw it as a progress, and then take it back, and then another progress.
Yeah.
From Hal's point of view.
And then later they take a trip, and she's like, this is lopsided. Like I've been telling you things, and you're not telling me anything. She actually says it's lopsided.
Yeah.
And you know, and then yeah, she's like, come here, and then he's pulling away and saying, is that really a good idea to be here? And then, you know, they meet the people at the dance place, and he's pulling away, and she's trying, you know, it feels like it's a constantly shifting dynamic, and I feel like that's one of the reasons it's very compelling, you know.
Thank you. Well, and then also at the villa, like that's also the first time he finds out about the boyfriend, and that's like he's like, oh, I thought this was maybe this thing, and then it's not, and so what is it? And I feel like it's you know, both of their neither one of them is willing to address the elephant in the room. It's one of the lines of dialogue, you know, in the final fight scene. Neither one of them is willing to talk about the thing that's happening, and I feel like that's kind of why it's this constant shift of not power, but you know what I mean, of having the upper hand. And one of the things that I think Josie does throughout the movie is she tries to divulge almost as a tactic to get to him to divulge. She's like, you know, I'm telling you these things and it feels good to talk about them, and maybe you could talk about them too. And he's like, I don't know about that. So I think there's kind of there's some fun stuff to play with there for sure. And I don't know, I think at the end of the day, we just tried to find stuff that felt true to kind of unveiling what the characters were going through at the right times, and you know, try to keep that dynamic there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it works. So you already knew Paul and you already knew Andrea a little bit when you started this process?
Yeah, so actually Paul and Andrea and I, we went to Portland together. We literally just flew there with a camera to shoot a music video for a song that she wrote called Portland. And that trip was sort of like a microcosm of what Molto Bella became, because we showed up in this city that neither one of us or none of us had really spent any time in, and shot a music video over a few days and had a blast. I mean, it was a lot of work. It was exhausting, but we had a lot of fun. And that's kind of when, you know, that you guys became good friends. And, you know, Andrea and I had been working on music videos for like before that for a couple of years. And I think that's when I really was starting to think about the idea of Molto Bella seriously. I think before Portland, we had maybe talked about it a little bit, but after that, it was like, it became like, all right, we should really do this. Because Andrea, like, even though Andrea has no acting training really, like she'd done some plays in high school, she tours all the time and she's in front of an audience all the time and does music videos. So she just kind of has this natural instinct in front of the camera. And when we were doing that music video, it really became apparent that it's hard to find an actor who is a really good musician and a really good actor. I remember the Coen brothers talking about that in an interview with Oscar Isaac and Inside Llewyn Davis, and Justin Timberlake too. It's like it's hard to find somebody who's really good at both. And so it felt like a cool opportunity to make a music-driven movie like this with her.
It does seem that finding musicians that can act is a lot easier than finding actors that can play music.
Yeah, for sure.
Those are usually failures. There's plenty of people that do it the other way around pretty well, and I think that was, you know, not in folk music necessarily, but in a lot of other genres, music does involve acting for videos and just pop performances and rock shows. It's, you know, that's all performance, you know.
For
folk
sure.
is, I suppose, a little different. And so how did you find, I wrote, you know, find the actors, including the musician. How did you find hard times? Did Andrea bring that to the film, to you, or did you bring that to her?
No, she brought that to me. She was going through old folk books, and because she really wanted to find at least one or two old folk songs that were public domain that we could, you know, bring to the film that would make sense. And she found Hard Times, and she was like, this is it. This has got to be one of the songs in the movie. And she sent me her version of it, and I was like, yes, absolutely. This is totally the tone for I think that was the first one that she sent. And that kind of became the basis for the soundtrack. Yeah,
it's a winning song. I mean, I'm sure the moment you heard it, you were like, we've got a winner here.
Yeah, you know? For sure.
What can you tell me about production? How many voltage converters did you need to bring with you?
Ooh. We actually, how many did we bring? We bought a couple of those before going over. We brought all the gear with us. Like we brought, I mean, 90% of the gear that we used, we brought with us. And then our gaffer Lance found a few things on the mainland that could ship over. But we had to be really lean. Like, you know, when we do shorts here, we're used to having dollies and, you know, big lights and whatever it is we need to do it. But we just had to use what we could bring. And so we brought the Alexa and a tripod and some lenses and 2 lights. The DP lit the whole thing with 2 lights pretty much. Joel, and he just, you know, obviously time of day for the exteriors and planning when we were going to be where and all that was a big part of the cinematography. But no, we had to be super lean. Like I remember we rented a drone to take over there, and we got the box, we got the case for the drone, and we were like, this is too big, we have to send it back, like we have to get a smaller drone. And we just brought what we could, and everybody checked it in their luggage, and we flew.
Yeah.
Any what was the thing that went most wrong?
Oh gosh. Well, to start off, the cinematographer and the first AC both missed their first flights. Not on purpose, because of weather. And so we ended up having to start 2 days later, and we were on a really, really tight schedule. So we ended up having no days off because of that. And then I'll let you tell the story about the gear.
Oh yeah, so the gear, because of the bulk that we had and the amount of gear that we had, you know, in order to get that checked into customs in Italy, you need something called a carnet, and we didn't have one. So it was one of those things where they wouldn't release the luggage or, you know, our equipment, like C-stands that were in cases that looked like carried probably sniper rifles or something, you know. And it's like, so we had to show up to customs and pretty much beg them to just say, oh, and play ignorance, like, we didn't know, it's just a C-stand in there, you know, this and that. And luckily the people at customs were very kind and they let us through. But that was definitely a big scare, because if we couldn't get those through customs, it would have been pretty much a no-go.
Yeah. It was so it was, I mean, it was a big learning process for us. Not only was it our first feature, it was our first time making a movie in another country, and you know, being in charge of producing all that. It was I mean, it was kind of one of those everything that can go wrong will go wrong scenarios, and we got really lucky that we got it done.
I ask this sometimes. A lot of times people knowingly smile when I ask this, but was there a moment of kismet where you thought things were going wrong, and then something locked into place, and it wound up better than it would have been to begin with, better than you had planned? Yeah, Paul's nodding his head. So
I have one.
Yeah, I've got one too. You go first.
Mine would be when I read the poem Luca to Andrea. Like we come down the cobblestone, it's just in the alley, and that's like the first nighttime one, because originally that was meant to be shot at one of the entrances to Taormina at like the East Gate. So it's like there's this archway that you walk in. But tourist season was still booming, and supposedly around this time of year it wasn't going to be. But so we started the scene there at the gate, but just so many tourists were walking by, it didn't seem intimate, and we couldn't get, you know, continuity was pretty much a nightmare. So essentially all the crew just started walking the streets of Taormina and just said, hey, what's a cool scene that we could do? You know, where can we do this scene? And eventually we picked the perfect alley, because it legitimately does fork off under a pool of light, and both of them go their own directions. And it serves the poem as well about the Honeygold street lamps.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, for me, that's my favorite happy accident. If that's that's my favorite.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. Yeah. No, that's exactly the kind of thing I think about when I ask this question of people. What do you got, Alexander?
The other one was the scene where they meet for the very first time. We were at the terrace and trying to shoot that scene, and the wind was crazy, and there was tourists everywhere, and it was just like, it was not working. It was just like we were just struggling at every turn, and it just wasn't going well. And so we ended up like waiting. We're like, how can we do the scene? Like, how can we beat the tourists there and do it? And we're like, we have to do it super early in the morning. So we ended up shooting their goodbye scene first at sunrise, and right after that we got to shoot the meeting scene. And there was something about doing those scenes back to back that really felt magical. And we wouldn't have gotten that experience if we had done the meet scene first and then the goodbye scene. So it was like the actors were in this like place, really vulnerable place, where they had done the goodbye scene, which is their most intimate scene in the movie. And then they got to go backwards in their characters to the beginning. And there was something about doing it that way that to me felt really, really special.
Yeah, it's kind of rare, like when you can shoot the goodbye scene and the hello scene back to back. And the hello scene was our last scene shooting together.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's kind of, it's trippy. I mean, I can't really explain it other than that. It's just a really interesting experience.
Because they knew each other the best, but had to act like they didn't know each other. But there was something about the way he's drawn to her and almost like the serendipity of the meeting that I think came out because they'd just done the goodbye scene that
oh, that's interesting.
Like
I never thought about that.
It felt magical in a way that it definitely wouldn't have if we had a shot at when we were intending to shoot it. So I don't know if it came across in the scene, but it felt magical to me.
Well, now I want to rewatch it with that in mind. Absolutely. I feel like I know a bit about filmmaking and production, especially, and I'll get into an editing question here in a second. But acting is like a foreign language to me, and it just seems like that would be extremely difficult for me to shoot the goodbye and then the hello scene last. I don't even know how to put myself in that sort of place. That would seem impossible to me.
It was definitely weird, but it was.
Yeah, it was. But also, I mean, I really hate to say it, but I mean, we just didn't have time. We had to get it.
Yeah.
Like we had, for especially the goodbye scene. We were talk about chasing the sun. A lot of people chase,
the
sunsets.
setting sun. Yeah.
We were chasing sunrise, and it was so. But then going to the hello scene right after that, it was. Alex really brought some good insight there that I feel is accurate. But I mean, yeah, at the same time, we were then fighting. We don't want tourists to show up, so we just got to get this. We just got to do it. So I don't know. It's crazy.
Did you have tourist problems throughout production, or?
Yeah, we had permission to be there. We had like a piece of paper that said we're allowed to be there, but we can't interfere with tourism. We can't shut anything down. So we had to essentially stay out of the way as best we could. And there were some scenes when it was really busy where we would set the camera up in the corner in a wide shot and mic up Paul and Andrea, and then we would roll, and I would tell them that we were rolling subtly, but we wouldn't call action or anything. And Joel and I would look up at the sky, acting like we were trying to see if the clouds were right. And then they would do the scene like they were rehearsing it, but we were actually rolling on it. And that's the only way we could get tourists to not look at the camera. So it was definitely like some stuff we had to like really, pull some tricks in order to get the scene done.
Wow, that's crazy. Where did you find the house? Was that even an extraordinary house for that area?
That's a good question.
So they're not really, but the cool thing about the house was the view of Etna, and how like the stone of Etna was incorporated into it. It was out a little bit outside of Taormina, so it wasn't like the super fancy house, in Taormina that kind of was initially in the script, I think, but it's something about it. The character of it felt right for the movie. And we actually found it on Airbnb, and then reached out to the owners and we're like, hey, we kind of have this crazy idea to do this movie where the crew stays in the house and we film there and, go in town to shoot the other scenes. And they were all about it. They were like, yeah, as long as we can share the trailer on our Airbnb website when you're done. And I was like, sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Give them a reel,
Yeah. Shots of the house. Yeah, absolutely.
How many days did you shoot?
We were 18 in Italy, and then 2 in Nebraska, and then 1 here in Shreveport. So, whatever that math is, 21. Yeah. Yeah.
Does that include the 2 days you lost, or not include the 2 days you lost?
That's a good question. I think it includes the
both.
2 days.
I think it's both.
Yeah.
It's like, if that makes sense. So it's like 1 and 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you tell me about editing? Were there what was that process like? Was there great stuff you had to leave on the cutting room floor?
We didn't cut much. There's one whole scene that got chopped. There's some scenes that got shortened, or we lost a line here or there. Cut a moment out for tightening. But so my friend Colby here in Shreveport cut it, and I had sort of done a visual assembly of the movie in Italy before we left, just so I knew we had the shots. I didn't know like the discrepancies of performance and the little minute details when we left, but I knew we had the movie just in a visual, like I think 30-minute sort of assembly just set to Andrea's music that we all watched before we left. So I knew that the shots were there and to assemble the story. And then Colby took all the material. He was kind of an unbiased eye because he wasn't on set at all, and he started putting together a rough cut, and it was really cool to see the cut come together. It's the first time that I've really worked. Well, I guess the second time that I've really worked with an editor. Usually I edit stuff myself, but it was nice to really have his take on it and kind of have that back and forth of like, I really love what you did with that scene, and I would have never even have thought to have done that. And then some stuff where I was like, I really feel like we need to use this take, and just so kind of molding the final cut. And I mean, you loved seeing it come together from like a really rough shape into a much more polished version.
It was definitely interesting because I mean, no matter how you look at it, Joel shot it beautifully. So it's like even the super rough was just like still just gorgeous to look at. Yeah. But really seeing it come together and just get more tight knit. And then I'm always a fan of in post of when the sound starts getting there. Yeah. Like that's my personal selfish thing. Like the sound design and the score, when all that starts kicking in, I'm like, okay, that's so. Yeah, that was exciting.
Yeah, and there's some things just where the edit like can really, I mean, tightening a beat can really make the whole scene all of a sudden fly. Like it's just It was crazy to see those moments, and especially over a full feature because doing shorts is one thing, but over the course of a feature to get the pacing right it was a long process. Something that I didn't really fully realize until we did it.
Yeah, I've got here. That was one of the things I mentioned or had written down under Mumblecore was the pacing, which is so much stronger in your film than I feel it generally is in a Mumblecore film. And you have a very economical style, both in the editing. Even though you linger, I feel like there's a lot of stuff to linger on, and then it just seems like there's no. It seems like every scene is really important. And so that's why I was curious about the cut scenes is like, I couldn't picture, I think because every scene seems so important to their characters. I was curious if there were other scenes that got left out that I would feel that is just as essential to their character,
I think the only cut scene, there was a scene between when they first meet and when they're at the restaurant where they're just kind of walking, down the streets of Taormina at night and talking a little bit before they get to the restaurant. And I remember sending the first cut of the film to one of my friends, Maverick Moore, who's a great filmmaker in Texas. And I had kind of been having this weird feeling about that scene before I sent it to him. And he was like, man, I love the movie, but I really don't think you need that scene. And I was like, I'm glad you said that because it doesn't feel right to me. I loved it when we shot it, and I loved it. Yeah, I liked the look of it. I liked the performance. I liked everything about it. It just didn't seem necessary.
Yeah, it was the only reason for that scene, and this is something we learned in the editing process, was it was a simple justification for why they're going to dinner.
Yeah.
That's all it was. She's like, oh, you forgot to like tell me, how I'm gonna get this film to you and stuff, but that's all it was. And so it was kind of like just cut out the justification and let the audience get it.
And it was the first cool guy line too, but it didn't really matter.
But that was the only scene.
Yeah.
It was good.
I'm definitely, when I finish this, I'm definitely going to go watch their meeting scene again because you are really, I feel like you're instantaneously drawn to them being together. I realize that's the purpose of the film, but I feel like it comes across from the first, scene. I don't feel like I don't feel like they need an excuse to meet up again or the next time or anything like that, because they feel very natural together. How has the festival circuit been? How is the release of the film?
It's been really fun and crazy and so cool to get it out there for people to see. Yeah, it's blown us away to just get to show it and hear the response and all of that.
I remember when I first watched the film, I hit your Facebook page and saw that you posted a trailer in February and that you filmed late last year, right?
Yeah, we were traveling home like a year ago.
I remember just like, wow, they got it in under the wire, and now what the hell are they gonna do?
Yeah.
Now that everything's blown up, what a time to come back from. I mean, and that was when I think that was when Italy was really blowing up with the virus. I was like, yeah, they're lucky they weren't shooting 4 months later or 3 months later or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the timing was just wild. And then we shot a movie right after that down in Baton Rouge, and we ended like February 12th or something like that. And I think Mardi Gras was happening, and Mardi Gras ended up being like a big place that COVID came out of in the States. So, I mean, we were just dodging.
Yeah.
Unknowingly dodging it.
I want to hear more about your next film at the end. But so you're playing at Sound Unseen this weekend, and where else have you played?
So we premiered at Heartland. We're playing Sound Unseen and Lake County and El Dorado Film Festival this past weekend, which was one of our first in-person screenings with a socially distanced audience. It was great. It was so cool to see it with a live audience and get those instantaneous reactions. But even at the online festivals to get the feedback and the to hear people who have watched it, and it's just so cool. I mean, you kind of forget when you're making these things that they're ultimately gonna and end up out in the world to be judged, and it's nice to have some positive response. So,
and how was Heartland?
It was a blast. I mean, we ended up winning the audience award for narrative feature, which was crazy, and of course, we wish we were there in person, and meeting filmmakers and meeting everybody. But I think everybody's done a really good job of adapting to the circumstances and giving the filmmakers an opportunity to showcase the work. So
cool. In typical thinking that artists aren't good enough, I was trying to cue you to hype that you won the audience award at Heartland. like, how can I push him into saying this? All right, let me follow that up. And get him to hype himself. You need to learn how to give the elevator pitch or whatever. So I'm really excited to announce that you guys won the jury award here.
Oh wow! Seriously?
Seriously.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Dude, that's awesome, man. Oh yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. And you should know, I can connect you guys later, but one of the jurors was Melanie Addington from the Oxford Film Festival.
Oh, yeah. We know Melanie, yeah.
And I know she's been doing the virtual cinema, so hopefully she can, maybe fill in a gap there. I know her festival is not for 9 or 10 months, but they seem to be doing a lot of events there. So hopefully you can reach out to her and
oh yeah, that's cool.
Get something else going. I know there's usually that December-January lag in festivals, so maybe you can swing something with her. So yes, very excited. Just found that out this morning. Actually, finally got everyone to lock down their. It's weird with COVID. People they seem to have less time. I'm getting less responses.
Sure. Yeah.
Things are. I don't know. Maybe it's the election. Maybe it's COVID. I don't know. But it's much harder to get people to respond now than it was last year. I don't know why.
Yeah,
people probably get used to just sort of hanging out, they don't really want to. I mean, I know I do, but that's great. That's so awesome.
That's so exciting.
It's an honor.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, cool. So yeah, you don't have any other festivals aligned. You're looking maybe for some distribution for Molto Bella, or possibly the do-it-yourself route, I guess.
Yeah, maybe we're kind of weighing the options with getting the film out there. I know there's ways to do it ourselves through Quiver and getting it on iTunes and Amazon and that kind of thing. But we're just kind of feeling the waters and talking to a few sales agents right now, and ultimately trying to get it out in front of as many people as possible. And then Andrea is going to release the album to coincide with the release of the film. So we're super excited about that.
But the single's already out, or is it not?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Hard Times is out on Spotify and iTunes and all the streaming platforms.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so the last question I usually ask is what's going on next? And you already have another feature in the bag. Somehow between November and February, you shot another feature.
Yeah. So that one's kind of a collaboration with our friend Jency. And we still have some pickups to do and things to square away on that one. And obviously a ton of post-production, that kind of thing. But I know Paul and I are both writing and are going to be reading each other's scripts here down the road. But yeah, do you want to talk about Esmeralda?
No, not Esmeralda, but we are about to get into production on a feature-length documentary that revolves around autism.
Yeah.
So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, we're super excited on that one.
Yeah, so that's a big one that's coming up for us. But
yeah, and then I'm starting to at least outline kind of a feature idea that's been sticking with me for a while now. I tend to let ideas ruminate, and if they keep coming back up and I keep being interested in them, then all right, it's probably worth exploring at least. And then I've legitimately started thinking about a Molto Bella sequel, so we'll see if anything sticks.
So many people ask about it because it's left on such an open-ended note that it's kind of like, I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting thing to play with,
Yeah.
But,
yeah, and especially with the Before trilogy having turned out so well.
Yeah.
I'm curious what route you'd go. Do you want to tell
what would you do? Would you do a sequel if you were in our shoes? Like, how would you feel about it? Or would you just say, you know what, just leave it? What's your take?
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure because they're a little bit different situation than the Before people. And
yeah,
I didn't ask it, but I have written down here when I talked about these power dynamics and the lopsidedness. I was curious if at any time you ever just wanted to like reach through the screen and like slap them and be like, "Get your shit together," And I don't know if they can last another 90 minutes of not getting their shit together.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think
That's a good point.
I think if we were to do a sequel, it would have to be, exploring a new element of creativity. I mean, there's tons to talk about with making stuff, and this was about a certain part of the process. And I think if we were to do it, it would have to be, it would have to say something different about the creative process than this one did.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know if it would work or not.
The idea in my head feels like a well-traveled one. They move forward, she's made an album, there's a level of success, and they have to struggle with that. You can have the same struggles. Are they good enough? Maybe the struggle of how art and careers can interfere with relationships.
Yeah.
But I do feel that that's a well-traveled road. I'm not saying there's not, divergent paths that could be interesting, but it is well-traveled.
Mm-hmm.
Molto Bella does not feel well-traveled to me. Besides, the mixture of the music and honestly, the Before series, almost feels like one of the only real things that you could say, well, it's kind of like that,
Yeah.
And the fact that it comes up so often, as I think is that. But, I think if you went that route, you'd be looking, I have a film in this festival that maybe you want to check out called 7 Short Films About Our Marriage, which is...
Yeah, China's in that. China Walker.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Cool.
Which, kind of, what I'm picturing, would happen, these obstacles on their path forward in a relationship. And, and A Star Is Born, or, whatever. And those I can't really point to many films that feel like Molto Bella. And so
thank you.
That doesn't mean don't make a sequel. That's just the thoughts in my head. And certainly there are, plenty of other things to do that could be done, touring life or whatever. But do you want to say anything about your feature that you already shot?
The one down in
pitch me.
It's the main character, and it's called Daisy. We're still playing with different title ideas, but it's going to have the word Daisy in it in some sense. And it's about a woman who's turning 40 and has always really wanted to have children, and ends up meeting a guy that is, she has an immediate connection with. It's sort of got a rom-com elements to it, but it's kind of about her exploring what it means, what motherhood really means to her, because she's grown up in the South. She's been told you get married at a certain age, you have kids at a certain age, this is what life is supposed to look like, and that's what she's believed her whole life and has thought she wanted, but it's sort of her coming to terms with there might be more than one definition of parenthood and of motherhood, and exploring those ideas without giving too much away.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us, and thank you for everyone who came out to the festival this year. It's been a hard year for everyone, and this really, everyone thanks me for continuing on, but I can't picture doing it any other way. This is a bright, shining point of the year for me. This is, might be probably the best thing really that's happened all year, is to get to talk to everyone and show everyone the films and do the programming. And so thanks for being a part of it. And thanks for everyone who's been watching all of these and everyone who stumbles across them later. And that's a wrap on the 2020 Lake County Film Festival. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Nat. Thanks so much. Really appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You're awesome.
Yeah.
My pleasure. Good night, everyone.
All right. Good night.
Night.